Travis Campbell. Travis, what's up?
Hey, well, I think you're wrong about the soul. I don't want to get this discussion.
Well, just so everybody knows, this is Ross and Travis on Notes On, and we do Christ on Purpose. And we were having a debate about near-death experiences before we went on, and we decided let's just go on and have the debate because it's really interesting stuff.
So we're not going to really introduce it. You just catch up with us. And I will just say that I just don't know what it means to say that I see my dead loved one in the afterlife without a body, and they don't have a body. So if we're just two souls, what does it mean to say that we see each other if there's nothing to see? Because the soul by definition is invisible.
Okay. All right. So let's back up a little bit, because here's a point I want to make that will go directly to this. Okay. So one of the things that happens when people have a near-death experience, and these have been verified, we don't have to question it anymore. We're beyond materialism here. Materialism is dead. This is the new the new paradigm here. People die, they raise up out of their body, maybe while their body is being operated on, and they say that they see the operating room. Typically, they go up into the corner of the operating room and look down and perceive what's going on. Okay, with what apparatus are they perceiving it? Their eyeballs are down in the body on the operating table. Now, here's the fascinating thing, Travis. If you think about this, let's say the ability to perceive is there with just my spiritual body. Now think for a moment about all the stuff, all the particles that are blasting around in the universe and the atmosphere that we can't see, right? There's the entire electromagnetic radiation spectrum, from radio waves and microwaves. You've got cosmic rays, all of this stuff. You would think that if our eyeballs were gone and you could still perceive, what we would perceive would be such a cloudy, giant mess of stuff that we wouldn't even really be able to see through it.
Okay.
Yet, when people have near-death experiences, they actually perceive in a manner very similar to how they see when they're attached to their bodies. They say that typically they say that the visions are more lucid. Sometimes they see a little bit into the infrared and the ultraviolet spectrum, so they see colors that we don't see, yet they're still perceiving as if they had eyeballs. So what that makes me think is that our soul has a construct to it. It has a form to it that interacts with eyeballs and nerve endings and the brain when we're in the body, but without the body, it still seems to only perceive visually those things that sort of we would see if we were connected to the body. And so your question about whether they could see a dead relative, say, that greets them, is that really any more amazing than them seeing a chair or the operating table? Because they don't have eyeballs to see any of it. So maybe there's a way that we perceive, even in the body, that is beyond just photons. There's some other connection that we have, and I'm completely speculating here, but people really do seem to have these near-death experiences where they go out of body and they meet people that they knew, and somehow they are recognizable to them. So what do you do with that?
Well, I mean, I can't say I know exactly how to do what to do with that. I don't know. You said the word spiritual body. What is a spiritual body?
I don't mean spiritual body. I mean spiritual,
like spirit.
Yeah,
spirit.
Yeah.
Full stop. I don't think that the problem in just seeing things as a soul is as acute if we're talking about like looking down and seeing people interact or whatever, as it is seeing another soul. I mean, because at least the object of sight in the looking down and seeing people at the operating table, at least that object of sight is visible by definition.
But it's only visible if you've got a body.
Well, I'm just saying in and of itself, it is visible. So a body is in and of itself visible. And so I agree it's a problem that a disembodied soul is looking out and seeing physical objects, but at least the physical objects it's seeing are seeable. But now if you turn its gaze to another soul, what it's trying to perceive is by definition invisible. So what does it mean for a soul to see another soul? Now, I think you get rid of all those problems if you take Paul seriously in 2 Corinthians 5, where he says to be absent from the body just is to be, I'm adding the word just is, but to be absent from the body is to be face to face with the Lord, where the Lord himself immediately upon your death, he calls your name, you go through the valley of the shadow of death, and then you emerge and you see a great light in Christ. And when you're seeing him in all of his glory, you are dead. That just is what you are. Anything short of that may be God giving you a vision to save you, aid you in your life on some encouragement, give other people a knowledge or a fuller vindication of the afterlife. Whatever the reason is for the vision, at least I can make sense out of this idea God he pulls the soul out of the body and gives the soul a vision whereby the soul experiences things, learns about people that it shouldn't know about, like their mother's long lost child that they never knew about, my brother, and that you hear these stories all the time,
right?
But these are visions that God has given to the soul, because the whole point is that he's eventually going to draw your soul back into your body, and you're going to go out the rest of your life because you're going to have these visions clearly intact, where you can tell your mom, I didn't know you had a child, or what have you. So that's kind of how I see the afterlife, at least among people who have these near-death experiences, or else I wouldn't be able to make sense out of the idea that the soul is perceiving things without eyeballs and perceiving things that are by definition invisible.
But they're only invisible, Travis, because our bodies are tuned to seeing, the visible light spectrum of the electromagnetic waves. Why does it seem odd to you that a spirit could somehow recognize a spirit if they're both out of body? Maybe that's just part of the way spirits interact.
I always thought the angelic warfare was mainly a warfare of thought, and that the quote unquote perception of one angel with another is more of conception. Now, I do think that when angels are drawn into our dimension, they take on a kind of corporeal form where they may not be visible to us, but they're visible to each other. But an angel is a pure spirit. An angel is a pure form. I mean, so when I'm disembodied, I'm an Aristotelian. I'm a hylomorph. Hylomorphism is the view that says that there are at least some things that are composed of matter and form, where form refers to the essence of the thing. That's the immaterial part of you, which we often call the soul. And the matter is the material, that's the body part of you. And I am a substance that just is a composite of matter and form. Well, when I set it up this way, when my form is drawn out of the body, it's not that my form has a form. I am just pure form at that moment. And we have a debate going on among Catholics right now over where if my personality just is the composite of the form and the matter, how is it possible for me to maintain my personality once the form is dissociated from the body.
Well, to me, and I'm doing a lot of reading on these near death studies right now, so I got all this stuff fresh in my head. It seems to me that people who have near death experiences seem to maintain their personality. They maintain their memory, they maintain consciousness, their cognitive ability. A lot of what we would say is us, my identity, seems to flow through, go past the body. So for me, I would, in my opinion, I wouldn't even think that's much of a debate. It seems like, there's this one woman who floated up out of her body during a near-death experience. She had a veridical experience on the top of one of the large, tall machines in the operating room was a 12-digit number. And she floated up. She noticed the number. She said afterwards, she said, I have OCD, and it was a 12-digit number. And when I run into really long numbers, I have to memorize them because of my OCD. And she came back into her body. She recounted this to the medical people there. They went up on a ladder and looked. It was digit for digit, the 12 digits. But the thing that astounds me the most, Travis, is she said she had OCD. She was out of body. So the OCD is part of her personality that's out of body. Apparently, that's part of who she is, not necessarily a physical attribute. So that blew me away when I really started thinking about that.
That would actually be a piece of evidence that I don't have a genuine position either way on the personality part.
Yeah.
Okay, but that would be a piece of evidence against those who think that the person, for example, Travis Campbell, dissolves at the point of form matter decomposition. I mean, the hylomorphist doesn't believe that when you look at a corpse, like when I die, if you're looking at a corpse, the hylomorphist doesn't believe that you're looking at me.
Right.
I mean, insofar as this physical plane of existence is concerned, Travis Campbell doesn't exist. And you might say, well, there's his body right there. But his body lacks animality. His body lacks rationality. His body lacks volitionality. And those are the essential attributes of Travis Campbell. Take those away and Travis Campbell doesn't exist. Even though I've left behind a DNA register. Right.
Maybe Travis, what the body does is body tells me when I'm tired. The body tells me when I'm hungry, so I go eat. The body tells me when I got to go pee. The body tells me when I got to sleep. I go unconscious for 8 hours a day. That's a pretty remarkable thing when you think about it. And maybe the body contributes to your personality while you're in it. Like I'm 6'4". The fact that I'm 6'4" certainly has made me a different person than if I was 5'4". I'm left-handed. I love being left-handed. It's part of how I think about my identity. If I was right-handed, I think I would be a different person to a certain extent. So, but once those personality features are established, probably during your lifetime, your body continues to contribute to your personality. But once you're separated from the body, it doesn't seem a stretch to me that your fundamental personality continues into the afterlife.
Right. Yeah, and those who think that Travis Campbell just doesn't exist simpliciter, full stop. When the form separates from the matter, the substance that is Travis Campbell is no longer. Those who say that don't deny that I will continue to exist sometime in the future at the point of resurrection, when form is reunited to matter. Then the thing we call Travis Campbell will continue on. And so when I wake up on resurrection morning It's almost like you have a very hard sleep, and it's like no time passed. That's what it'll be like. Theologically, this has import because for us Protestants who don't believe in purgatory, not that big of a deal. I mean, we go away on this. For the Catholic, it is a big deal because, I believe that let's say that the personality does dissolve at form, matter, decomposition. Well, then my consciousness is drawn to the Lord, and I have a vision of him, but I'm not maintaining my personal integrity at that point. And then a consciousness that is not a believer, a person who's not a believer, when they die, their form will go to a place, kind of a holding place, where they may be tormented on some level, but they're not experiencing the wrath of God.
Right.
They may be tormented because they're in darkness, or it's all a shadow or something. But not until their form, matter, recomposition at resurrection will they find themselves facing the judgment of God, and then God will punish their entire person, soul and body, in the lake of fire. But it makes no sense if the personality dissolves at form, matter, decomposition. It makes no sense to speak of someone going to purgatory and experiencing punishment where they are purged of their sins if the personality isn't there to experience the purging.
That makes sense to me. And when you read through these near-death experiences and you read story after story about these people that have these very lucid, they say more real than reality experiences, there's no sense that they are losing their personality or their identity. They are who they still maintain all of that, which to me is really, really remarkable. And like we've talked about, it's such amazing evidence that naturalism is just dead.
We're way past that. We're talking about a specific debate on what does it mean for the soul to survive the body.
Right.
I mean, it seems to me that if I were Catholic, I would have to maintain, come hell or high water, that the personality survives the form, matter, decomposition. So if I'm an Aristotelian Thomist, I'm going to have to side with those who maintain personal existence beyond death, because purgatory just makes no sense on that.
Well, what is the argument? Well, I guess I'm not getting the argument against that. Who would be arguing that we lose our identity during that?
I went to a Catholic conference a few years ago, and I sat around a fire and listened to two Catholic philosophers go at it. And one was working on his dissertation, and he was arguing that for the Thomist, and I'm a Thomist, for the Thomist, the substance that we call Travis Campbell just is the composition of Travis Campbell's form and his matter. The entire package is the substance.
Okay.
So that is my substance. That is what I am. Take the form, the essence of Travis, and separate it from Travis Campbell's matter, then the substance no longer exists.
But maybe Travis,
that substance just isn't there. Because if I am by definition a form matter composite, get rid of the form matter composite, put the form here and in the body here, then Travis Campbell is no more. It makes sense to speak of it that way, given your assumptions. And so the Thomists who believe in personal continuity beyond death, they got to come up with arguments to show, metaphysical arguments to show how the personality is maintained in the form, even in the absence of the body. And maybe, I mean, I didn't read the dissertation, so maybe he will appeal to Nde'S that have a person maintaining certain personality traits, like the woman who looked at the numbers and in her OCD, she memorized them. I don't know if NDEs work though as counter evidence to the thesis, because in every NDE there's a sense in which the soul is still tethered to the body, or else it wouldn't be drawn back into it.
That's only because the samples that we see are the ones where people come back into the body. The ones
Right.
The ones where they don't come back into the body, we call it death, and it's really hard to interview them.
Yeah.
But
but that would mean that NDEs, do the NDEs count as counter evidence to the thesis that the personality dissolves at form matter decomposition? Because if there's a sense in which the soul is tethered to the body until it really dies, until the body is really, truly, totally shown up dead, burned in the ground, however, cremated, because maybe it's at that point that we see the full decomposition, in which case form exists without body, in which case the substance no longer exists, until, of course, resurrection day, when we see the resolution or the recomposition of the form in the body.
Maybe the parts of who I am that are connected to my body, that are can be described by how my body is, are much more superficial than we are comfortable thinking about. Maybe most of who I am, my personality, my essence, is in the immaterial part of me.
Yeah, that's the metaphysical argument, that if I were a person that was dead set on defending the personal continuity, personality continuity after death, that's what I would do. I'd say it's precisely because the essential attributes of what I am survive the death of the body, that I can maintain personality even in the absence of the body.
I think that makes the most sense to me, based on the evidence that I see in these NDEs. I mean, that people who often have these out-of-body experiences recognize dead friends and relatives who are there waiting for them, as the people that they were. So how they do that, you and I were talking about that, and I don't really understand that. Maybe there's a way a spirit recognizes a spirit. And Travis, maybe that's part of what we do in the body, and we just don't recognize that part of the connection because we're such materialists. We think of it as entirely as physical. But
Sure.
Those people who they recognize, if their personality was gone or washed away or temporarily taken away until the bodily resurrection, what would it even mean that they recognized them? They seem to recognize them and talk to these people as if they were still, their dead great grandfather or whoever it was. There's no indication in the interviews that somehow they're different, other than the fact they don't have a body. But personality, they seem to be the same people.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I obviously believe that near-death experiences are not just possible, but they're veridical. They've happened, and I define a near-death experience as an actual event whereby a human being either experiences death or something which brings them on the brink of death. In that experience, they experience a separation of a part of them that we call the soul from the part of them we call the body.
Right.
And they exist for a season. By season, I mean a few minutes to a few hours outside of the body. And all kinds of people have had experiences with this to the point where they've come across dead relatives. The question is, what is the source of the sight?
Right.
Not whether they had the experience. And I don't think it would be God in any way, shape, or form deceiving them by giving them a vision of a dead relative after death. And perhaps the reason they knew it was their relative is they were given that sense by God himself. And then the vindication of it was that when they ascended back in the body and asked mom, dad, whoever about this person, they were like, how did you know about that person? We never talked about that person. No pictures in the house, nothing. That person died 20 years before you were born. There's no way you would have ever known. And all the people on our side, we don't ever talk to those people on that side of our family. And so you didn't know about that person.
Yeah.
You know, we can come up with all kinds of scenarios where it's foolproof. There's no way they could have known. And yet they did know. Well, I have no doubt that they had that experience. And my favorite in the J.P. Moreland, Gary Habermas book, where they talk about all of this, they have a book called Immortality.
Yeah,
my favorite one was the woman who floated on top of the hospital and saw a red shoe.
Yeah.
And that door had been locked for years. Some people had never even been. They've been working in the hospital for 20 years in that quarter of the hospital, never went upstairs. No janitor went up there. And they went up there and they verified that there was the red shoe up there. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, call me gullible, but that sounds pretty legit to me that this person had this experience.
Yeah. Okay, but let me take that then, and let me challenge what you said a couple of minutes ago about maybe God gives us a vision in seeing dead relatives, for example. In your conception of that, would that be a fictitious meeting? In other words, if someday in heaven, you know, after the resurrection, I go to that dead relative and say, was that really you that greeted me when I died? And they say, I don't know what you're talking about. Or would they say, yeah, God gave me a vision at the same time and we were really interacting, but God facilitated it somehow? How do you see that?
I think both options are legit, and neither option would make God a liar. God could have used the occasion for this person who is face to face with Christ and is beholding the Savior for a split second. It may, you know, we see films on this where you'll have a person have an experience and an hour of the movie is squeezed into, you know, what was essentially 2 minutes in the plot line. You know,
Yeah.
but it felt like 4. And you and I'm sure you've had dreams where the dream lasted for days, but it was 30 minutes.
Yeah. Or 3 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
So just as that, you can have a split second in their consciousness where God gives them that vision and he uses the occasion. He draws the soul out of the body and connects these two souls and gives them a vision of one. And there's a communication there. You can have that, or maybe in the afterlife. Yeah, I don't have that, but God gave them a vision of a person for something beyond the already dead person's benefit. He did it wholly for the person who's having the new experience. So you can have both. Either explanation would work, and I don't think neither explanation destroys the idea of near-death experiences, and either explanation, nor does either explanation make God somehow disingenuous or a liar or something like that.
I guess I don't like it, but personally, I just don't see a problem with the idea that an immaterial soul can recognize another immaterial soul in some way that we can't understand. Here's a thought, Travis. We can end with this, and would take a whole nother show to explore this. But you know, at the beginning of biology, they used to think of cells as just these little gelatinous blobs that they didn't really do anything. And now we understand that they're just immensely complex. When the lesson in that is when we first start thinking about things, we tend to simplify them. So here we've got this idea of an immaterial soul. Maybe there's rules that govern that. Maybe there's a structure and parts to it, and and maybe there's a form to it that is also part of it that is formed when we develop that. So we're developing our physical body form and our spiritual body form at the same time. Maybe there's just all this stuff to it that you and I are debating this, and our temptation is to just think of it as a single thing, and maybe it's as structured and complex as the physical world.
Well, I believe that there are metaphysical laws just as there are physical laws.
Yeah.
And since that is true, what the soul can do and does, all that is governed by certain rules. There's no doubt about that. Speaking of DNA, you would be hard pressed to convince me that DNA is even material itself. Because think of it, it's a code, a mathematical code that exists everywhere in the body at once.
Yes.
So it's here in my head and it's here in my feet at the same time. Well, that by definition is immaterial.
Yes.
So materialism is done for. I mean, you and I disagree on the specifics, but a lot of it is because we are forced to engage in speculation once you establish that we do survive the death of our body. We can't do much more than speculate beyond that. I mean, I am taking a very specific metaphysic that I've embraced because of a whole host of other things. And I'm just applying it to this. I'm saying
Sure.
there just seems to be something, out of sorts with a certain conclusion if this metaphysic is true. But obviously, if you don't grant the metaphysic, then there are other ways to look at it.
Well, it's
unfortunately we're out of time, but
it's wonderful to speculate with you, my brother.
Always.
Yep. This is great stuff. This is where it's going. Materialism's dead. I love you, my friend. We'll see you next week.
Peace out.